I've been getting a lot of questions about my upcoming inner child workshop on December 14th in Cumberland, BC. What is inner child? It's a psychological concept that refers to part of ourselves that carries an emotional wounds and patterns formed during our childhood. Inner child can manifest in many ways: low self-esteem, difficulty trusting others, and a tendency towards self-sabotage. But there's not just one way to connect or soothe your inner child. There's multiple ways. So what we'll do is we will do meditation throughout the day. We will do some playful arts and crafts because that inner child loves to play and get silly. We will do some journaling. We'll do group discussion. There will be a lot of introspective time. Welcome to the Well podcast. This is where we deep dive into healing, self-discovery, and personal growth. If you're new around here, I'm your host, Lauren. I'm a clarity and mindset coach, and I'm super excited about the launch of my podcast. I think this is only episode 5 or 6, but I'm excited to dive in, especially about this topic today. I've been getting a lot of questions about my upcoming inner child workshop on December 14th in Cumberland, BC. So I figured if some of you have a few of these questions, likely many of you also have similar ones. So I thought coming on here and giving you a little bit of a lowdown on what to expect, what is inner child healing, would be helpful. If you have other questions, please feel free. If I don't hit the mark on something and you're curious to learn about it, please feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to chat or provide any support where I can. But let's dive in. So what is inner child? What is inner child? It's a psychological concept that refers to part of ourselves that carries an emotional wounds and patterns formed during our childhood. So we may not be conscious of them, but a really great way to identify them is when you're out and about and somebody does something or says something and you feel triggered by that, and all of a sudden you're wondering, why am I feeling angry or annoyed? That could likely be a direct correlation to a pattern or wound that was developed in your childhood that has not healed yet. So this influences our inner child, and all these patterns and wounds influence our behaviors, our beliefs, and our relationships in the present. So our inner child can manifest in many ways: low self-esteem, difficulty trusting others, and a tendency towards self-sabotage. I'm going to go deeper into ways to identify whether or not inner child work is right for you. So stay tuned if that's what you're really curious about. But by understanding sort of what is happening within us and addressing the needs of our inner child, we can heal these past wounds, we can heal these patterns, and we can absolutely live far more fulfilling lives because of it. So what I've done is I have my piece of paper here. I've written down some questions that have come in. So I'm going to be referring to these as we go through. But let's just start off right away with what are some common signs that my inner child needs attention and love. And I have a list here of a few things. And as I'm reading through, maybe just think to yourself, yes, no, oh, that sounds like me, that resonates. Because this will be a really great indicator of whether or not this is the right path or journey for you. So what are common signs? Excessive self-criticism, that inner critic, negative self-talk, difficulty with setting boundaries, so not holding true to what matters to us and where our requirements lie. People-pleasing, which, again, if you're new around here, I'm the queen of recovering people pleaser, I like to say, but it's an everyday practice, I assure you. Fear of abandonment, difficulty trusting others, emotional reactivity, so emotional intelligence, how you carry yourself in difficult moments or when those triggers occur, and also substance abuse and coping mechanisms. So those are the primary things that we can turn to. And if you thought, oh yeah, I got that, oh yeah, that sounds familiar, oh yeah, that's me, then this work is calling you. And if you're listening to this podcast, it's definitely calling you, whether that be with me or somebody else, but this is your sign to look at that inner child. Some effective techniques So people always ask, well, what do you do during these workshops? What are we going to be doing? And I know that feeling, having been a control freak in the past, very hyper vigilant. I've signed up for many workshops and women's retreats now where you really don't know the itinerary. You don't know what you're going to be doing. And I know for some people that can be very difficult. And I encourage you to lean into that discomfort. But for those of you that are just genuinely curious, hey, I just, what do you do? There's a combination of things that we do throughout the day. So there's not just one way to connect or soothe your inner child. There's multiple ways. So in my inner child workshop, I like to incorporate multiple different techniques. So what we'll do is we will do meditation throughout the day. We will do some playful arts and crafts because that inner child loves to play and get silly. We will do some journaling. We'll do group discussion. There will be a lot of introspective time. So something that in my experience of going to retreats and workshops that I didn't love was that they were so jam-packed with value and activities and exercises, which is incredible. But by the end of the weekend or by the end of the day, you're so tired because you've just received so much information. You've probably felt really big feelings that when you leave, sometimes it's easy to just drop off and not revisit any of the stuff that you've learned. There is no time for integration. So it's one thing to have the self-awareness around a need that you have or a pattern or a wound, but how are you integrating what you are learning about yourself? That is what actually fosters and promotes real change. So something to keep in mind. So what I like to do is really incorporate time throughout my workshop to go introspective, to be on your own, to ask yourself. This is not something that I think we give ourselves enough of, is prioritizing intentional time for ourselves. And that's exactly what we all need. So in my workshop, you will get time to sit and journal. I will provide journaling prompts. If something comes to you on your own, great. Although we are in an intimate group setting, because I normally don't do large workshops, I like to keep the group small for a lot of reasons. The feeling of safety, vulnerability, confidentiality. These workshops are jam-packed. There's a lot in them. And so it's also important to me as someone growing up who never really felt heard, although I talk a lot, I think it's really important for my clients to really feel they have the space to be heard and to be seen. So this is something that's very important to me that I incorporate. A question or a comment that I did get from somebody was, I don't like group work because I don't want to be compared, judged, or coached by other participants. Whew, I feel you on that. As a coach, I go to a lot of retreats with other coaches, and we are all there and capable of being able to chime in and give our 2 cents and coach one another. But that's not the purpose of why we're there. We're not looking to be coached. We're looking to remember who we are, and only we're the best at doing that. So in my inner child workshop, nobody, even me, I rarely coach in my inner child workshop. I'm far more of a facilitator. I take on the facilitator role because we are not meant to coach people. They are there. I am their guide, but it's yourself that is guiding you through the experience. You know what you need in those moments. You know what you are gaining in those moments, what insights you are having, and that's going to look differently for everybody. So while there is open discussion, that just means there is space to feel heard. It does not mean that we are all sitting around talking to each other, comparing notes, asking for feedback, or giving advice. There's absolutely none of that. And in one of my Google reviews, actually, if you go and check them out, somebody does say there is so much power in the silence, because there is. So I just want to leave you with that little nugget. Of course, if you don't feel like going into a group setting is the right thing for you, honor that. I understand there can be discomfort there. I would tell you to really ask yourself, when you're thinking about doing something, are you getting a feeling of discomfort? Like, this is scary. This feels a little outside my comfort zone. Ooh, I feel kind of nervous. Or is it like, I just don't feel safe? Because there's a very big difference. But if you are not willing to lean into some of the discomfort, then you will never break through some of these limiting beliefs or patterns or wounds, because this is not comfortable work. And that's just the honest truth. And I tell my clients that before I work with them. It's really important that you've got to be ready to do it. Having to look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, hey, what's going on within me, is no easy feat, which is also why it is such a privilege and a blessing to hold these workshops and hold space for other people, because we are all one. We are all experiencing similar feelings, regardless of the circumstance that brought us to that feeling. So having community is important, but choosing the right safe space for you is even more important. Otherwise, it won't be effective. But if you have any more questions about that type of stuff, because some groups are huge, 100 women, some groups are 5, like my workshops, it really depends on your level of comfortability. But I do encourage you to, if it's not I don't feel safe, and it's more of just like, I'm nervous because this is new and I'm going to be vulnerable, lean into it. You might be surprised at how you feel at the end of the day. Sharing is a very powerful tool, if done in the right place and with the right people. How can I incorporate inner child work into my daily life? So this isn't really about the workshop, but this is just, hey, how could I start doing this work on my own? If you're new to it, maybe this is a really great stepping stone to begin your journey. And there's tons of different things. You can journal, you can do breath work, you can meditate. Creative expression is really great. That playfulness, that inner child within us. For those of you that maybe grew up in a household where you're parentified and you had to be the grown-up, or maybe you have lots of siblings and you're the oldest and you had to take care of them, you're missing a lot of opportunities when you were a child to be playful, to be funny, to have fun. And maybe it's really hard for you to do that now. Well, if that's the case, that's your inner child needing some attention and love. And then, of course, you can always seek support. So there's groups, there's coaches, there's therapists, there's counselors. There's tons of resources out there. I can also give you resources to books or podcasts that have helped me in the past as well. Lots and lots of options. How can I recognize and respond to the needs of my inner child in the present moment? This is a really great question. Pay attention to your emotions. That's probably the number one thing. Like, notice when you feel sad. Notice when you feel happy. Notice when you're anxious or angry. And sit with that and ask yourself, what triggered that? Why do I feel that way all of a sudden? Being able to gain that self-awareness is part of the first step of really diving into this work. Practicing self-compassion is another really important one. If you're treating yourself with kindness and understanding, the way I like to think of it is, when I ask myself, why am I angry about that? And I sit with them, like, why did that trigger me? What is that bringing up? I'm like, oh my gosh, of course it makes sense. Like, for me, for example, I have a hard time letting loose, being silly and goofy and funny. I didn't do a lot of that as a child. So now as an adult, I find it really quite awkward, or I'm very impatient when playing with my nieces or nephews, my goddaughters. Like, I'll be like, speed it up, hurry up. But it's like, why is there so much discomfort in sitting and actually enjoying this? So when you can practice self-compassion, saying, I understand why I have a hard time being funny and goofy. It's because I didn't do that as a kid. So I'm learning that now as an adult. That's why I am the way that I am. So I'm no longer criticizing myself because I can't be playful and funny and goofy, but I'm actually showing myself love and compassion, because how sad. I want to be able to get there. So I want to love that inner child and reparent the inner child by giving that child opportunities to be silly and goofy and funny, but in my adult self, in my adult form. Another one, what were we talking about? Recognizing and responding to the needs in the present moment. Set boundaries. That's a big one. Set boundaries. You need to protect your emotional well-being. So if you are triggered by someone, or when you leave a party or a social gathering and you don't feel energized, filled, joy, contentment, if you leave there with social anxiety, feeling drained, for all my empaths out there, those are indicators. Those are signs that you need to set some boundaries, that you need to either remove yourself from those people, from those settings, from those circumstances, or there needs to be some structure around them in a way that can make you feel authentically yourself, comfortable in your skin while you're there, and genuinely enjoying your time and whatever it is that you're doing. And then, of course, seeking support, having other people, even if it's a friend, having other people really understand and hear you. I saw this thing, I think my mom sent it to me. No, my friend Lisa sent it to me the other day, and it's so funny because I was looking at the same reel, and it's this doctor who's talking about how our friends only need 8 minutes of our undivided attention to really truly feel heard, seen, and loved. And it was so sweet because Lisa was sending it to me to thank me for holding 8 minutes of space for her in our friendship whenever she needs it. And she does that for me as well, which is so special. So I want to encourage you to ask yourself, who's your 8 minute friend? Do you have somebody that you can call and just vent to and share and unload and offload what's going on within you? Because sharing is such a powerful tool if done with the right people, with a trusting person, and with somebody who you love and respect. Another question was, how can I find a supportive community or group to connect with others on a similar journey? Of course, you can Google lots of different groups. You can go on Facebook. Instagram has lots of text chats, text groups, communities, different things like that. Or you can join my Inner Child workshop on December 14th. I will be doing more. So if my workshop's full by the time you get around to it, I will be doing more. I do have a running wait list. So reach out, ask me questions. I'd also be happy to hop on a Zoom with anybody if you have more questions about it that you just want to personally speak to me about. Confidentiality is really big. I know living in a small town, sometimes people worry about who they're going to meet at the workshop, but I take confidentiality very, very, very seriously. So go online, look for resources, and if you can't find any, reach out to coaches like me, because we have other coaches in our network that are doing similar things, and perhaps inner child work is not the direction for you, but I can absolutely recommend other coaches that have other offerings. I recently I just booked a session with a coach the other day and had my human design read, which was super cool. And so there's lots of different things that we can be doing to help ourselves. It doesn't just have to be this work, but in my personal opinion, this work is what has helped me the most. It's what continues to help me the most. It's where I feel the biggest impact and I get the most results. That's my personal experience. And what's the expected timeline for inner child healing? And how can I measure my progress? Well, you're going to hate hearing this, but it's not about the destination. It's all about the journey. And there really isn't a deadline or a timeline, rather. There's not like an end point where it's like, I'm done. And if there is, I don't know anybody who's there. So it's really not about needing to get somewhere. It's not about like, oh, once I do this thing and heal this wound, I'm going to be perfect. I'm going to feel joy. I'm not going to have anything that I want to work on. And coming in and out of this type of healing and these journeys in self-development, I think is very important. Just like Mother Nature, there's seasons in the world for a reason. So I have seasons where I cocoon, where I don't want to share my energy with anybody. I'm a homebody. I'm protecting myself from the chaos. There's other times where I'm really deep in my healing and I'm doing a lot of counseling or therapy or working with my coach. I'm taking all that knowledge that I've learned and trying to share it with my audience, with my friends, with my family, whoever's willing to ask or listen. So there is no timeline. It is a slow and steady process. Rome wasn't built in a day. Another great quote to reflect back on. And neither is inner child healing. So something to remember. Measuring progress. This is such a good question. You're going to be able to notice because your thoughts are going to change. Your feelings are going to change. How you show up is going to change. Things that once triggered you won't trigger you anymore. So you can be in the presence, which this is actually really good for the holidays coming up. If you have a parent or a sibling or a crazy aunt or whatever, or crazy uncle that triggers you, inner child healing can really, really help with being able to manage your emotions, right? It goes back to that emotional reactivity as one of the signs that this is an opportunity for you. So with the holidays coming up, Learning to set boundaries, learning to release things that you no longer want to hold on to will also help you be able to show up in the most loving and kind and compassionate way possible. Also, I have written here, celebrate small victories. It's so true though. If you're really not stopping to celebrate the small wins, you almost just don't even realize sometimes they're happening. I often have to slow my clients down and say, hey, you just did that incredible thing. Like, have you stopped to pause? Have you given yourself a hug or a high five? Like, this is amazing. When you came to me, you said this is something you wanted to achieve, and here you are doing it. So have you taken the time to acknowledge that within yourself? Have you said, I'm proud of you, Lauren. You're so brave. I can't believe you're doing this, or you did that. That language and that conversation is so important. And we are all so quick to give that to everybody else around us. And yet, when it comes to speaking to ourselves, I know when I first started saying things like that, showing myself compassion felt awkward. It felt really untrue. I can remember years ago Googling, what is self-compassion? Like, how do I show myself that? And so this stuff does take time, but celebrating your progress along the way. And if you're a friend that notices your friend has really developed or grown, tell them, hey, I really noticed that you're really chill about this, or I've noticed that doesn't bother you anymore. I'm so happy for you. It's important to feel community, especially at a time like now where our world is in the state that it's in. There's a lot of negativity, there's a lot of division, there's a lot of heaviness. And what we need is the opposite. We need softness. We need to be the light. And if you are listening to this podcast, this is your sign. Be the light for yourself first, and inevitably you'll be that light for others as well. What else? Are there any specific books, workshops, I've already kind of spoken to that. I have lots of resources. I have lots of suggestions. If you have more questions about this, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to connect, even just to have a conversation about any of this stuff. I'm here to offer anything and everything I know, to share my personal experiences. If you're going on this path, just know you're not alone. I see you. I'm with you. I'm standing with you. And for those of you who are intrigued about my inner child workshop, it will be December 14th in Cumberland, BC. It'll be 10 to 4 p.m. and it's a stacked day. You are going to be tired. I highly recommend you don't make any plans after, except to sit on your couch and drink a lot of water. We will have snacks. Also, there's a really awesome registration bonus right now for a free Reiki session. So when you register for my workshop, you will also receive, on top of the workshop, snacks. I always have snacks. But you'll also receive a 1-hour Reiki session, who is local to the Comox Valley. She's a level 3 Reiki master. Her name is Wendy, and that's included in the price. So that's a fun little add-on and a bonus. And my past clients have loved it. They loved her. So I want to keep doing that, keep supporting her along the way as well, and keep sharing those resources. Because if you haven't tried that, that's another opportunity to try something new. If what you are doing is not working, pivot. And I know that coming into a group and wanting to participate but feeling nervous or scared about sharing, you're not forced to share anything that you don't want to share. You get to decide what you're going to give, what you want to explain. And I always have people who are nervous. I get nervous still when I go to workshops or retreats when I don't know what we'll be doing or what will be asked of me. And being able to put yourself in that place, you may be very surprised at how you feel. And everybody that has done my inner child workshop, I've ran 3 or 4 now, everybody that's done them wants a second. So that tells me that there is value here. I absolutely love holding space. I love facilitating. It lights me up. And I would love to invite you to join me. So if you want to learn more about this, or if you want to register, go right to my Instagram. It's Lauren Alexandra. And you can send me a DM with the word inner child, and I will send you information. I will send you registration details, or we can hop on a chat and I can answer more questions that you may have. So it's Lauren Alexandra. Head on over to my Instagram. If you haven't followed me, give me a little follow. I'd appreciate it. And DM me, Inner Child, for more information. I hope to see you all there.